Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. The topic for today's video is how you can save your first 10K. Because after you have that first 10K, you start having capital to invest with. You start already knowing how you're making money. But that first 10K is always, always, always the hardest part. And I'm gonna give you one word on how you're gonna get there and how we're gonna get there. It's gonna be through discipline. All right, we have to stay disciplined during these few months. You got to put your head down and just get to work and save literally as much as possible. Cut unnecessary expenses and just save, save, save as much as you possibly can. I know y'all know about the 50 30 20 rule, where it's like 50% on bills, 30% on wants, 20% on savings. 20% is not going to get us to 10K, especially if you're making not too much income. You're only getting paid like 15, 20 an hour. That 20%, it's going to take us a while. So what we got to do is we got to save just as much as we possibly can. And you know what? You got to reduce expenses. If you can't follow that, if you can't even follow the 50, 30, 20, you got to reduce expenses 100%. But regardless, you should be increasing the amount that you're saving if you want to get to that first 10K. You know, honestly, I'd say 50 or 50, 10, 40. You know, 10% goes to what you want, 50% towards your bills, 40% goes savings. That'd be a solid start, I'd say. So you got to cut out those unnecessary expenses 1000% if you want to get that first 10K. And you have to be consistent every single month, putting away money, following that rule until you get there. You don't have to make too much. Right? You don't have to be balling with like 60 an hour, 70 an hour. You don't got to be doing all that. But with the money that you are making, you got to save as much as possible. You got to invest as much as possible. And that's how you're going to get to your first 10K. All right, that's the grind set. That's the move set. So, two things. All right, we got to reduce expenses. So we got to not spend money where we don't have to. We don't go out every single night. Buy $30 worth of stuff that you don't need and all that good stuff. So don't go out every single night. Don't drink all that. Take a few months break, stack up your money. All right, you can go have fun once you've completed your goal, right? But we got to stack up that 10K first, and then from there, we got to start to continuously build. But that first 10K is definitely 1000% the hardest part. All right. So we got to reduce expenses as much as we possibly can. Living expenses is definitely the hardest thing. Get a roommate, get all that if you have to, and just grind through. So living expenses is definitely the hardest part. Your car bill. Come on, guys. We can't be having too high of a car bill if we don't even have 10K saved up just yet. We can't be spending on a crazy car build if we don't even have any money saved up. All right. So don't worry about all that. Get just a car that can get you from point A to point B. Have solid living expenses. Keep it cheap. Don't do anything too crazy, and don't spend too much on things that you want right now. All right, because you can get better things once you have a whole lot of money saved up. All right. But the other thing that we gotta do is we gotta increase our income. You know, that combination between reducing living expenses and increasing income, that's the method right there. All right. And how can we increase our income? We got to learn high valuable skills. We have to have skills that we can apply that can generate revenue. All right. You got to find something. How can you add value to something to make money out of it? This could be through a job. This could be through like content creation or something. You have to lock in on something and go just like all in. You got to work, 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 work. That's all you have to do. All right. Definitely a lot harder than it sounds. Definitely it sounds pretty easy, but it's a lot harder in real life, right? So increasing our income is another option, you know, and we gotta do this ethically, we gotta do this the right way. But increasing income is definitely what we gotta do. All right. You gotta chase that promotion at your job. You gotta start a side hustle or something that can make you some more money. Find something you like to do and find out how can you monetize this. All right. I got one of my friends actually, one of my friends here while I'm out in Cali. He's a game developer. All right. And he's talking to me. He makes games for fun on the side. Like just little games that people like to play, like .io games. If y'all know what I'm talking about, if y'all remember like Krunker and Surviv from back in the day, from playing on your school laptops and stuff. But he makes games. All right. And he was talking to me about it. He was like, man, I gotta figure out how to monetize this because now I'm starting to get players. I'm starting to have thousands and thousands of players every single month, and it's a free game. It's a fun game, and people are playing it. I'm starting to generate like a fan base. But now I got to figure out how can I monetize this. And, it's a hard thing, especially with a game like that, because you don't want to make the game pay to win or anything, because then nobody wants to play it, right? Like that's you're gonna make people hate it. So you gotta think about, can I add skins? Can I add things that don't impact the game's value, but people still want for like cosmetic reasons or something. So he's currently working on his shop, and since he had the skill of game development and making a game, and also being able to market it in a sense of getting, that fan base, now he's able to generate revenue off of it, because now he's going to be able to start adding like an item shop or something to his little game, and from there people are going to start slowly buying stuff, you know, and that has like a ripple effect too, because once you go into a game and you see somebody with a skin, you might be like, oh, I want that too, and their person's going to buy it, and slowly he's going to start building things up, and that's the type of stuff that you want as a side hustle, something that you can build on the side to where you can make money from it and increase your revenue without having to like, physically work, physically give time. Because that's money. He works hard one time, builds the shop. From there, it's always going to keep increasing your revenue. It's always going to be generating him revenue. And that is probably the most important thing and the key to financial success and freedom in the future. Because if you can make money while you're sleeping, that's the best possible way to make money. So you got to make something one time, and you can continuously generate revenue from it from there. All right, so we got to increase our revenue to make that 10K. So definitely for these few months while you're stacking it up, you got to save rigorously from whatever you're making from your job. And with whatever time you have left, instead of spending that time going out or anything, spend that time on building a skill, spend that time on locking in and thinking, how can I build something that can generate me revenue? you know, and that combination of like having a job and building a little bit of revenue on the side, man, that'll get you 10K in no time. All right. These months will pass by. I know recently guy, he does like the 90-day runs or something. And you can see like he's a good example of what I just talked about. He runs his job, he works, his full-time job, he makes money from that. And then he also makes content creation. He makes videos. And slowly that content creation for him is really growing to the point to where he's gonna be making more from that than his job. And that right there is something that I hope to also do one day. But like at the same time, that's the process of making up to that first 10K and on and on and on. Then like now he can start thinking about 100K, 1 mil, all those levels. It's starting to increase for him. You know. But right now let's just focus on that first 10K. All right, we got to make baby steps. And once we have 10K, we can invest that and continuously start to grow on that and build up our wealth. That's the secret to wealth. So once again, I'll keep it kind of short now for a kind of summary. We have to stay disciplined. That's the most important thing. And from there, we have to reduce expenses, and we have to increase income. That is the simplest idea of how you're going to save your first 10K. And these principles apply onward and onward and onward to 100K, a mil. But I'm not going to talk about something I haven't already done. I haven't reached that level yet. All right, it's going to take a lot more time, a lot more investment before I'm at those levels, right? But I can talk about that first 10K. All right. So I appreciate y'all watching. Check out some of the other videos. If y'all have any ideas, let me know. Like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments any other ideas, and I'll get those videos out to y'all. But yeah, man, I appreciate y'all watching today's video. Lock in, let's save up that first 10K, and from there, we're on a path to success. I'm gonna catch y'all later. Have a good one. Peace out.